hold opinions like they're facts, shaping your reality based on beliefs that may not even be true. Yet, how often do those opinions get in your way? What if you realized that all these opinions are just abstractions in your mind, nothing more than fleeting thoughts that shape your experience? In this video, we'll uncover how these mental constructs limit your freedom and keep you from experiencing life as it truly is. Are you ready to break free from the illusion of certainty and see the world without the filter of your opinions? If you're truly committed to your personal growth, now's the perfect moment to take action. Subscribe to our channel Motivation Basics and like this video if you're committed to improve every day. Don't keep this to yourself and share it with someone who's ready to break through their own barriers today. Let's stop talking and start doing this together. Picture yourself entering an entirely unfamiliar setting. A vibrant city, alive with flashing neon signs, people rushing in every direction, and the buzz of endless conversations filling the air. If it's your first time, everything around you seems exciting and captivating. The towering buildings, street markets, and foreign language all demand your attention in a way that your usual surroundings simply can't. This is the power of novelty. When we enter an unfamiliar setting, our minds wake up. Compare this to your routine at home. You walk past the same coffee shop every day, the same street signs, the same neighbors, yet you hardly notice them. That's because familiarity dulls perception. It's like that framed picture in your living room. You loved it when you first put it up, but now you barely glance at it. Your mind has categorized it as known, and so it disappears from active awareness. Yet, when you're in a new place, you find yourself constantly saying, "Wow, look at that." You're no longer naming everything automatically. Instead, you're fully present, simply observing. The mind, momentarily freed from labeling, experiences reality in its raw form. This is a point Eckhart Tolle, in his book, The Power of Now, speaks to so profoundly. He notes, the present moment is the key to liberation. The more you are able to embrace and experience the present moment without mental interference, the more alive you become. Our minds, bound by habitual judgments, are often the main barriers to fully appreciating the beauty around us. When we free ourselves from these labels, we experience the world with fresh eyes. But here's the challenge. You bring your mind everywhere you go. Even if you're surrounded by breathtaking skyscrapers or an ancient village with cobblestone streets, your habitual ways of thinking come with you. If you're someone who tends to complain about small inconveniences, you'll find things to criticize no matter how incredible the location. Maybe it's the street noise, the unexpected weather, or the fact that your hotel room isn't exactly as advertised. This is how our conditioned thoughts operate. We think we are reacting to the outside world, but in reality, we're responding to our own mental filters. Consider a common scenario. Two people get stuck in traffic. One person fidgets, honks, and mutters about how unfair life is. The other turns on their favorite podcast and enjoys the break from work stress. Same situation, two completely different experiences determined by mindset rather than reality itself. Our opinions, then, are merely mental constructs. They are not absolute truths, but rather interpretations shaped by past experiences, beliefs, and emotional states. When an unexpected event disrupts our plans, a delayed flight, a sudden downpour during an outdoor event, a job interview that doesn't go as expected, we often resist, believing that things should have gone differently. But where do these expectations come from? They are simply thoughts, conditioned by what we assume life should be. This concept aligns closely with Eckhart Tolle's insight in A New Earth, where he explains, the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Our thoughts about it. Our thoughts about the situation are the culprits, not the event itself. The coffee spill, the traffic, the missed opportunity. None of these events are inherently good or bad. It's only when we form judgments about them that they take on emotional weight. We are not reacting to the world as it truly is, but to the thoughts we project onto it. Take a moment to consider how often this happens. Maybe you've seen someone at a restaurant send their meal back 3 times because it isn't perfect, or you've known a colleague who always finds a flaw in every project, no matter how well executed. Their dissatisfaction isn't rooted in reality. It's a habit of the mind. There's an old parable about 2 shoe salesmen sent to a remote village. The first one calls his company and says, "Terrible news. No one here wears shoes. There's no market for us." The second one calls and says, "Great news. No one here wears shoes. We have an entire market to explore." The situation is identical, but the perspectives are completely different. This is how our minds work. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. Our perspectives are shaped by years of experiences, biases, fears, and conditioning. We assume our opinions reflect reality, but in truth, they are nothing more than internal projections. Consider a simple example. You wake up early, planning to have a productive morning. But just as you're about to leave for work, you spill coffee on your shirt. Instantly, frustration kicks in. Of course, this would happen today. Just my luck. Now, if you weren't already in a rush, would the coffee spill really be that big of a deal? Probably not. But in that moment, your thoughts about the spill, not the spill itself. Not the spill itself. Create suffering. Someone else in the same situation might laugh it off, change shirts and move on. Again, the situation is the same. Only the interpretation differs. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle says, "The past has no power over the present moment." Our habitual thoughts, shaped by past experiences, often carry over into the present, clouding our ability to see things clearly. If we didn't automatically assign meaning to the coffee spill, for instance, we could simply acknowledge it as a minor event and move on without creating unnecessary frustration. The key is to observe the situation without attaching a mental story to it. So how do we break free from these habitual reactions? The first step is recognizing that our thoughts are not facts. They are mental abstractions, fluid, ever-changing, and often inaccurate. We must learn to observe them without immediately believing them. A useful practice is to pause whenever you find yourself in a moment of irritation. Ask yourself, is this reaction based on reality, or is it based on my expectations? Am I suffering because of what happened, or because of how I think it should have happened? If someone else were in my position, could they see this differently? By asking these questions, you create space between yourself and your automatic reactions. That space is where real freedom lies. Much of our frustration in life stems from the illusion of control. We believe that if we plan enough, organize enough, or think hard enough, we can shape reality to fit our preferences. But the truth is, life is unpredictable. No amount of preparation can account for the unexpected twists and turns that come our way. Tolle touches on this idea in A New Earth, where he writes, "When you complain, you make yourself into a victim. Leave the situation, change the situation, or accept it. All else is madness." The madness is in our need to control and resist what is beyond our control. We often try to shape the world to fit our desires, but this only leads to frustration and suffering. The key is to recognize the things we can change, accept what we cannot, and release the need for control over outcomes. Think about a time when things didn't go according to plan. Maybe you missed an important flight, lost a job opportunity, or had a relationship end when you weren't ready. In the moment, these events felt like disasters. But looking back, many of them led to new paths, ones you couldn't have anticipated at the time. This doesn't mean we shouldn't plan or strive for success, but it does mean we should loosen our grip on the illusion that we can control every outcome. When we accept that life unfolds beyond our expectations, we stop resisting what is and start working with it. We often chase perfection, whether in our careers, relationships, or personal goals. believing that once we get everything right, we'll finally be content. But have you ever noticed that once you achieve a goal, the satisfaction is fleeting? A new desire quickly takes its place, and the cycle repeats. True peace doesn't come from arranging the perfect life. It comes from accepting life as it is, with all its unpredictability, flaws, and surprises. The most content people aren't those who have mastered control, but those who have learned to flow with whatever comes their way. Think of nature. A tree doesn't resist the wind, it bends. A river doesn't complain when it encounters a rock. It flows around it. We too can cultivate this adaptability by releasing our rigid expectations and embracing life as it unfolds. As Eckhart Tolle discusses in The Power of Now, true peace arises when we stop identifying with the mind's constant chatter and learn to live in the present. The mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. He writes, "When we stop viewing life through the lens of expectations and judgments, we see the truth of the moment, not a mind-created abstraction of how things should be. Instead of mentally constructing ideal scenarios, we learn to trust the present moment as it is." To practice this, try to imagine a world where everything is supposed to go according to plan and where the outside world doesn't deviate from the conditioned mind's ideal. Because in the end, reality rarely matches up with your mental aspirations. That leads to misery. Depending on your perspective, it can work or not work on a retreat and in everyday life. As you may have observed, it's always the same stupid thing. Next comes the idea that I can't take it more, which is, of course, just another totally false concept. Anything is within your reach, if you can only let go of your thoughts and accept this is what is. Here, you train yourself to let go of mental expectations and instead live in harmony with the present moment, with your inner self, rather than wishing for a different outcome. The one exception to this rule is communicating in a way that allows for a change, if such a change is possible. Doing it yourself, cleaning it up, doing this and that are all acceptable alternatives. That's all right, but aside from that, here is where you may practice living in harmony with the ease-ness of the present moment and honoring it as a spiritual discipline. Appreciate the here and now more fully. Make the most of your time here by appreciating what is happening right now. Tolle points out in A New Earth that the constant striving to shape the world to our ideal is a form of egoic thinking that prevents us from connecting with the deeper, present truth of our existence. Ego is no more than this, identification with form, he explains. This includes identification with your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your past, your future, your possessions, your success or failure, your status, and so on. When we cling to an image of ourselves or the world that is rooted in abstraction and judgment, we forget the beauty of simply existing in the present. By surrendering to the moment, by accepting what is rather than fighting against it, we return to a place of peace and alignment. You embrace the here and now, to use an alternative term. Not only that, but it's not hard to accomplish that here. It's not that we don't know about imperfections. We do. However, being in this safe environment makes it easier to appreciate the here and now. Compared to being in a busy airport with cancelled flights, stuck somewhere, or in the hospital, this would be simpler. Then, events both large and tiny take place in all places you go. One way to tap into your spiritual side, to that which exists beyond your own ego, is to make an effort to fully embrace the here and now. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle emphasizes that the present moment is the key to freedom. You are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. When you fully embrace the present, you free yourself from the grip of mental abstractions. You cease being at war with yourself and the world. Your thoughts may still come, but they no longer define you. By letting go of the need to control the outcome, you can enter a state of acceptance, where peace naturally arises. That should serve as your practice here. It's nearly too easy. Someone once told a Zen instructor, "I'm going away now on a journey for several years." You might recall that I brought it up once or twice before. Plus, I've spent 5 years in this monastery without success, so I must be missing something. Would you be so kind as to allow me to rehearse for my journey? All right, here is your spiritual practice for your journey, the Zen teacher remarked. Please report back to me in 5 years on how things turned out. Express your gratitude for everything, no matter where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, or what happens. There is absolutely nothing wrong with me. Is it the end? A fictitious religious ceremony, an intricate form of meditation that requires years of effort to become proficient in. Make it your spiritual practice to say thanks for everything. He advised instead, no matter what occurs, I will not have any complaints. I have absolutely no complaints whatsoever, so whether you catch the bus or miss it, you catch it and thank everyone. I am quite grateful. I am not complaining in the least. You failed to catch the bus. Thank you very much. I am very satisfied with everything. And here you are, lying warmly in a beautiful hotel room, or you're stuck in the freezing weather with no place to rest. Not only does it become increasingly difficult to express, but if you truly mean it, it is meaningless to say it. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. Sounds nice when you're in a 5-star hotel, but when you're living on the streets with nothing but your words, it will carry you far further. That's not too difficult. You may also argue that the cushion isn't perfect, yet it is. Say it when you're freezing in the cold because you can't afford a hotel. It's easier said than done. There are no motels, no place to stay. The weather is chilly and damp, and I'm grateful for everything. I appreciate it in a sarcastic way. Thanks God, it's just what I needed. Thank you. But no, it isn't. It's when you express gratitude, which signifies fully embracing this very moment. All right, I guess I might as well just accept it for the rest of tonight, since I'm going to be out in the cold. I don't know for sure. You might be lucky and locate a spot to sleep in a minute, or someone might even offer you a ride. Thank you for everything, but especially for this very second. Sincere expression of gratitude here signifies total surrender to the present moment, and it's even more profound than embracing an easy moment if you can embrace one that appears hard to accept with a delicious dinner, a cocktail in hand, and the appetizer ordered, oysters, Harper, anything. Some people adore them, others despise them. But that's just the way most people think, so they can say things like, "Oh, that's okay," and express gratitude for things like oysters and the fact that they don't have any complaints. Eckhart Tolle discusses this concept in The Power of Now, explaining that the ego attaches itself to judgments, preferences, and desires. Anything that you can identify with as an object of perception, such as a thought, emotion, or something outside you, is part of the ego, he writes. The more we cling to these judgments, whether it's a dislike for oysters or a need for things to be perfect, the more we create an identity around them. But when we release those attachments, we find ourselves free. We find peace in simply experiencing the world as it is. And then you get home, only to be hit with an overwhelming nausea. You must have thought, "Thanks for everything. I have no complaint." Right, as you savored each oyster, you had a few oysters too many. So what happens now? Basically, it's about bringing your inner self in harmony with the here and now, an extremely potent religious ceremony. Why does it have such an impact? Particularly when you say it with sincerity, despite how difficult it is. A more profound, transcendent sense of self, which the Buddhists refer to as no self, undeniably emerges in the process of total surrender to what is, as it supersedes the individual's solely subjective sense of self. Thus, in essence, it's a denial of your form identity. You are no longer limited to your form identity alone, but it doesn't imply you lose it either. being able to stand in opposition to what is strengthens one's form identity. A person's me, their form identity, or the me, grows in strength in proportion to the degree to which they resist the status quo. Your profile picture, and it's quite happy when you have opponents. A lot of enemies. Force increases. Everyone is out to get me or us. Assuming it's a group ego, that group ego will love its opponents. Without them, it would essentially perish. All group egos rely on one another. No, not us. We are this, and they are that. That something else arises as the individual. The uniquely individualized sense of self weakens and fades away. That is the beautiful thing. Something transcending your individual identity arises if you cease to consistently disagree with something. Whatever we want to name it, the transcendental dimension is there. You might refer to it as your deeper self or higher self, depending on who you ask. Something emerges that transcends the individual, and words lose their significance. You are connected to a vastness and to everybody else there, and it is also a location of enormous strength, aliveness, and possibility. Therefore, a deeper sense of oneness is experienced when emotion, that transcendent dimension, emerges. The wall of separation between people and the natural world has come tumbling down. The otherness of alien people is no longer felt by you. You are merely assuming a different persona. That's what you'll learn through time. You are in every person you encounter, only under a different mask. It's a great way to connect with other people, isn't it? The fact that you might feel not just linked to the world, but also intrinsically one with all living things. Through this process, as Tolle explains, you move beyond the abstractions of the mind and discover a deeper reality. You are the awareness behind the thought. He writes in the power of now, and in that awareness, the illusion of separation dissolves. We begin to see that everything is interconnected, that we are all expressions of the same underlying consciousness. This is the true peace that comes when we stop fighting the present and embrace it fully. By letting go of mental abstractions, we release the need to define, judge, and control. And in doing so, we can experience life as it is, beautiful, whole, and connected. Stop wasting time and make every moment count in your life. Subscribe to Motivation Basics for daily motivational videos on personal growth. Show your commitment by liking the video and commenting the word grow. Be sure to share it with someone who needs to slow down in life. We're in this together.